Okay, good morning, everyone. I'm going to get started by just officially welcoming all of you guys. Sawadee Kap, welcome to Wat Tung. Sawadee Kap, welcome to all of you guys that are here at the temple. And then also those of you guys that are joining us online, welcome to all of you. Today is what we call our group learning program, where we come together on Sunday and Wednesday in order to share with you the teachings of the Buddha. We use the first book of this book series that I share called Developing a Life Practice, The Path That Leads to Enlightenment. This is the first book of the book series, and the entire book series is titled The Words of the Buddha, The Path to Enlightenment, Revealing the Hidden, where you're learning with the original words of the Buddha this path to enlightenment. What enlightenment is where the mind is peaceful, calm, serene, and content with joy. You no longer experience any discontent feelings. So by the time you get to enlightenment, the mind is no longer experiencing any anger, sadness, frustration, irritation, annoyance, guilt, shame, fear, boredom, loneliness, shyness, resentment, jealousy. Even the slightest displeasure is eliminated from the enlightened mind. And this happens through training of the mind. The training that the Buddha taught is part of his entire path to enlightenment, and meditation is a big part of that. So we start our classes with meditation, but you wouldn't be able to actually meditate your way to enlightenment. You need much more than meditation. So you wouldn't be able to meditate your way to enlightenment, but you also wouldn't be able to get to enlightenment without meditation either. So after the meditation, I'll be sharing with you some teachings that are going to help you on this journey to enlightenment. In this group learning program, it's a 7-month program, and as I mentioned, we progress through this book each weekend. So each Sunday, I share a specific chapter in the book, and now we're in chapter 14, which is titled Cultivating Healthy Mental States, Loving Kindness, Compassion, Sympathetic Joy, and Equanimity. These are 4 healthy mental states that you would need to learn and develop and cultivate in the mind in order to remedy certain symptoms that the mind is experiencing that are hindering one from experiencing enlightenment. So I'm going to be explaining what those 4 mental states are, what you're actually remedying in the mind, and then how to actually cultivate them in the mind so that you can develop this as part of your practice in your journey to enlightenment. If this is your first time here and you've never been here before, just to help you be more comfortable with the space here, is in the back of the room. There's a bathroom, the very last door. You're welcome to get up and use the restroom at any point. There's even restrooms outside the main classroom. If you go outside, you'll see signs that'll take you to the main restrooms of the temple. And we even have water that is provided by our students that you're welcome to help yourself to at any point. So make yourself comfortable. And as we go in the class, you're welcome to ask questions. For those of you guys that are here at the temple, we have microphones in the white bowl there in front of the camera. If you guys wouldn't mind using the microphone, that way the people online will be able to hear your question. There's a little gray switch on the front. You just press that gray switch, wait like a second or two, and then the mic will be active and you can actually talk. For those of you guys that are online, either in Facebook, YouTube, or Zoom, you can ask questions by putting those into the comment section. I'll be able to see those and then answer them during the class. Or if you're in Zoom, you can electronically raise your hand and ask any questions or follow-up questions directly. So I'll start with guiding you guys in meditation. The meditation that we're going to do is called breathing mindfulness meditation. This is the primary form of meditation that the Buddha taught. And in order to do this meditation, let me first provide you some brief guidance on your body position. Most of you guys are all sitting in the seated position. There's 4 positions to actually meditate in. The Buddha shared the seated, lying, standing, and walking positions. And as you develop on the path to enlightenment, you might decide to learn all these 4 positions because your body can't permanently be in just one position all the time. You're going to need these different positions at different times. But just giving you guidance on the seated position, most of you guys are sitting on the floor. So if you're on the floor, you might have a cushion under your rear, or you might put your legs off the mat. Everybody sits a little bit differently. There's not just one specific way to sit. If you get your hips up in the air, this lessens the angle at the hips, the knees, and the ankles and allows the circulation to flow. So that's why some people like to put their legs off the mat. Other people like to put multiple cushions under their rear, and that gets the hips up in the air. So whatever you find comfortable, just be sure that your legs are lightly crossed because that allows the circulation to flow. And then some people like to sit in chairs. If you'd like to sit in a chair at any time, feel free to grab one. Usually with the chair, you might just sit with your feet flat on the floor or lightly crossed at the ankles. It's really up to you. There's no set way to actually position the body because everybody's body is a little bit different, and we're going to find different things that are comfortable. So you find what's comfortable. You're not interested in the body being painful, but you're also not interested in it being luxurious either. You'd like to be in the middle where the body is comfortable. The hands and the arms, the Buddha put his right hand over his left with his thumbs together, and he put this into his lap. If this is comfortable for you, you could use it, but there's other options as well. Some people like to put the palms on the thighs or on the knees. Some people put the palms up. Again, it's whatever is comfortable for you. There's not just one set way to sit in meditation. The upper body should be erect. This keeps the mind attentive and alert during the meditation, whereas if you were slouched, the mind would have a tendency to be dull or lethargic. Whereas if you were real rigid, the mind might have a tendency to be overactive or uptight. So you'd like the upper body to be erect to keep the mind attentive and alert during the meditation, and this will allow you to do the work of actually doing the meditation. As we start meditation, I'm going to ease into meditation with some chanting. If you'd like to see these chants, they're in the Pali language, which is the original language that the teachings of the Buddha were captured in. They're on laminated sheets on the table over there. I have laminated sheets with the actual chants and the English translation so you can see what we're actually chanting. This isn't a rite or ritual or a ceremony or worship. It's not prayer or anything like that. What it does is helps to ease the mind into meditation and actually get more benefit out of the meditation itself. It brings some awareness to the mind, awareness to the breath, and eases the mind into the meditation. During the lifetime of the Buddha, they used chanting as a way to commit his teachings to memory, that when he taught, everything was oral. So the way that they remembered the teachings and to be able to actually apply them in practice is to chant them every 2 weeks. So when the Buddha would talk, people would remember his teachings word for word for word for word, and then they would chant them every 2 weeks in order to commit them to memory. These chants that I share, I suspect the Buddha is not the one who actually created them. I think that his students probably did that either during his life or after his death, because you'll see that the chants have a lot of admiration, a lot of respect for the Buddha. And a Buddha doesn't walk around with ego and arrogance and boastfulness and, teaching people to chant things in order to honor them and respect them. Instead, if you learned with a teacher who had no expectations of you, didn't want anything from you, but helped you to move from the anger and the sadness and the frustration and all the other discontent feelings to this peace and joyful mental state, which is permanent, and you get to experience this mental state for the rest of your life, you would have deep respect and admiration for this person. So I suspect his students created these chants either during his life or after his death as a way to honor him and show appreciation and gratitude for what he did to help them to get to this enlightened mental state. So if you'd like to see those chants, you're welcome to get those sheets over there. You're even welcome to chant along if you like, because it helps to ease into the meditation. Once we get into the meditation after the chanting, I'll provide some guidance in order to help you understand how to do the meditation during the actual meditation itself. Then there'll be a period of time where it'll just be meditating. It'll just be quiet. Surely you'll hear an occasional dog bark or a car go by or something else in your environment. Those of you guys that are here or those of you guys that are at home, surely you're going to hear some sound or something like this. But this is all impermanent, right? You can't permanently meditate in a quiet environment. It's just not possible. So if your mind's craving permanent quietness when you meditate, when you hear occasional sound, you might be irritated or annoyed. But just understand that those sounds are impermanent. So as we're meditating during that period of time where it's quiet, if you hear a sound, just bring your mind back to the breath. You'll hear me guide you in that way as we get into the meditation. Then after the meditation, we'll come out of that with some more chanting. And then this is where I'll start the class and sharing teachings with you guys, helping you guys understand these 4 healthy mental states. So if you'd like to make yourself comfortable, if you need more cushions or you need a chanting sheet, up to you. Feel free to get whatever you need. I'll go ahead and get started by chanting. And then again, you're welcome to join along. And then I'll provide you some guidance as we get into the meditation. Arahang Samma Sambuddho Mahakeva Wat Tung Mahakevanhang Apivateyami สวากขาโตมหาเขวตาธัมโมธัมมังนามัสสามิสุปฏิปันโนมหาเขวโตสาวกสังโฆสังฆังนามามินับโมตัสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะนับโมตัสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะนับโมตัสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะอิติปิโสมหาเขวะอะระหังสัมมาสัมพุทโธวิชาจารณังสัมมุโนสกขาโตโรกาวิตุอนุเตโรปุริสาธัมมาสติสัตตาตาวามนุสนังโอโตภะคะวะติ Okay, with the lower body and hands and arms comfortable, and the upper body erect, just close the eyes and start breathing in through the nose and out through the nose. Here you're just looking to establish the breath, a nice, natural, steady, consistent breath. Not forced or controlled, just a gradual inhale through the nose, experiencing the full breath. And then, whenever you're ready, exhale out through the nose. Breathing in and out. Breathing in and out. Your breath may not match up with the guidance that I'm providing, and that's okay. This is your practice. I'm just here for guidance. You can use this voice as a reminder that whenever you get to the next inhale, breathe in gradually through the nose, establishing a nice, natural, steady, consistent breath. And then, whenever you're ready, exhale out through the nose. Breathing in and out. Breathing in and out. With the breath well established, start fixating the mind on the breath, either the sound of the breath coming into the nose or the sensation of air moving over the skin into the nose. The breath is the present moment. Fixate the mind on the breath, the present moment. Breathing in and out. Breathing in and out. With the mind fixated on the breath, whenever you notice that it moves off the breath, cut that off, let it go, and come back to the breath, the present moment. No need to observe the thought, label it, judge it, analyze it, or even try to figure out where it's coming from. Whenever you notice that the mind is moved off the breath, cut that off, let it go, and come back to the breath, the present moment. Breathing in and out. Breathing in and out. I'm going to be quiet now and let you do this work of focusing on the breath, cutting off and letting go anytime the mind moves off the breath. You have nowhere to go. There's nothing to do. No one needs you right now. This is your time to focus on the breath. Breathing in and out. สัมมาสัมพุทโธมหาเขวาพุทธังมหาเขวันหังอภิวาเทมิสวากขาโตมหาเขวตาธัมโมธัมมังนามัสสามิสุปฏิปันโนมหาเขวโตสาวกสังโฆสังฆังนามามินับโมตัสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะนับโมตัสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะนับโมตัสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะอิติปิโสมหาเขวาอะระหังสัมมาสัมพุทโธวิชาจารณังสัมมุโนสคาโตโรกาวิโตอนุเตโรปุริสาธัมมาสติสัตตาตาวามานุสนังพุทโธภะคะวะติ Okay, if you guys would like to slowly ease your way out of meditation, I would just once again welcome all of you guys, including those of you guys that joined us since we started meditating. Welcome to all of you guys. Welcome to Wat Tung. This is our group learning program, as I was mentioning at the beginning, where I help students to learn the path to enlightenment, developing a really nice foundation, a nice framework to understanding the teachings of the Buddha and how to move the mind to this enlightened mental state. This is a 7-month program where each Sunday we meet and I cover a chapter in this first book of the book series. And then on Wednesdays, we meet and we do meditation together, and I open up to any and all questions that students might have. You're welcome to join this program at any time, even though there is a beginning. Students join at different times, either here at the temple or they join online. As you travel and you go around the world, you can actually join through our live stream here at the temple. And then also in the evenings, I live stream the class as well from my home. So 9 a.m. and 9 p.m. each Sunday and Wednesday, there's a live class. And then those classes are recorded. So if you can't make the live class, you can always listen to the recording on Facebook, YouTube, or on our podcast. I'd like to share a little bit of details with you on the meditation before we move in today's topic, which is cultivating healthy mental states, loving kindness, compassion, sympathetic joy, and equanimity. As you're developing your meditation practice, it's helpful to understand what you're looking to cultivate in the mind, because this path to enlightenment is to train your mind. It's not about a bunch of beliefs and then believing those things and hoping something good happens when you die. You're actually training your mind through learning teachings, through reflecting on them to independently verify them and through practicing them. And by transforming your mind and uprooting certain pollutions that the Buddha discovered in the unenlightened mind, you can get to this enlightened mental state where the mind's peaceful, calm, serene, and content with joy permanently for the rest of this life. You no longer experience anger, sadness, frustration, irritation, annoyance, guilt, shame, fear, boredom, loneliness, resentment, jealousy. Even the slightest displeasure is eliminated from the enlightened mind. An enlightened being is just always in a good mood. They're never even in a bad mood because they've uprooted the conditions that are causing the mind to even experience a bad mood. There's focus, concentration, clarity of mind, deep memory. You'll notice your personal, professional relationships will really blossom because you're not having this bitterness and hostility in your relationships any longer. So meditation is an important aspect of your practice, but it's not the only thing that you would need to learn. But let me just share with you what's going on in this meditation so that you understand why you're actually doing it and the purpose of it and what you're looking to cultivate. We call it breathing mindfulness meditation because what you're cultivating are the wholesome qualities of mindfulness and concentration while eliminating the unwholesome quality of craving, desire, attachment. The wholesome quality of mindfulness is awareness of mind, where you can have awareness of what's going on in the mind. Because if you're going to purify the mind on the path to enlightenment and uproot certain pollutions out of your mind, you need to have awareness of what's going on in the mind. And in the unenlightened state, an individual typically is going through the world without awareness of what's going on in your own mind. So in the meditation, you're developing this awareness of mind or this mindfulness. You're also developing concentration to be able to focus on a single object like the breath. And by exercising the mind like this 2 or 3 times a day for 30 minutes or more, you're developing more and more of those wholesome qualities. And this practice of 2 or 3 sessions for 30 minutes or more, it's something that you need to gradually build up to. It's not something that you can just come out of the gates and start doing that. Some people start with just 1 session for 5 minutes or 10 minutes, and that's what they can do. But over a period of 6 months, a year, 2 years, you would like to gradually build up your practice where you take more and more things out of your life that are unbeneficial and start inserting into your life something like meditation. This is developing your life practice. That's the title of this book that we use for this particular group learning program, is you're developing a life practice that can sustain you, where you can consistently meditate over a long-term period of time and develop and train the mind with that mindfulness or awareness of mind and concentration. When your mind is on the breath and the mind moves off the breath, this is very common. This is what happens in meditation. Even for an enlightened being, their mind moves off the breath occasionally. But the difference is that in the unenlightened state, you're going to notice that there's maybe this bombardment of thoughts where you just have lots and lots and lots and lots of thoughts. Or you might have a thought and then you indulge in it for a period of time. And then you realize maybe 2 or 3 minutes down the road, like, oh yeah, that's right, I'm meditating. Let me bring the mind back to the breath. So if these things are happening for you, this is very normal. A bombardment of thoughts or an indulgence of a thought, and then you realize much later to bring the mind back to the breath. You're not bad at meditation. You haven't done anything wrong. This is just what the mind does when it's undisciplined and uncontrolled. But what you're doing in meditation is you're exercising the mind and developing the mind more and more, just like you would develop a muscle in the gym. And the more you lift weights, the muscle becomes stronger and stronger. Now you can control the body better. The same thing is when you're exercising the mind, you're developing the mind so that you can then control and have discipline over the mind more and more. So not only are you cultivating those wholesome qualities of mindfulness and concentration, but you're eliminating the unwholesome quality of craving, desire, attachment. What craving, desire, attachment is also described as wants or expectations. It's a longing and a yearning. It's the mind chasing after the objects of its affection, wanting things to be a certain way. It's like the unenlightened mind thinks the next new shiny object waiting around the corner is going to provide some kind of lasting satisfaction. So the mind chases it and chases it and chases it. Maybe a new pair of shoes or a new phone or a new computer, maybe a boyfriend or a girlfriend, or maybe more money, or maybe a different job. And the mind just chases and chases and chases. Maybe a bigger car, a nicer car, maybe a bigger house. The mind just thinks these external things are going to provide some kind of lasting satisfaction. So the mind has this craving, this longing, this yearning, and it chases after it. So if the mind gets what it wants, it gets pleasant feelings. It gets happy, excited, elated, thrilled, euphoric, because your mind has acquired its craving. But your cravings, you can't acquire them all the time. You can't permanently acquire what the mind wants. So as long as your mind is wanting and longing and yearning, in some cases you're going to get what you want and you get excited and happy because of that. But then in some situations, because of impermanence, you're not going to get what you want. And now your mind ends up in the painful feelings: anger, sadness, frustration, irritation, annoyance, guilt, shame, fear, stress, anxiety. These are all very painful to experience. So as long as the mind has craving and longing, yearning, and you're chasing after things, sometimes you'll get what you want and you'll get pleasant feelings. Other times you're going to not get what you want and you get painful feelings. And even when you get what you want and you get those pleasant feelings, ultimately you end up in dissatisfaction because those pleasant feelings that you acquired are temporary. They arise, they change, and they fade away because you're basing your inner feeling on some condition. For example, if it's sunny outside, you might get happy. But then when the sun changes and now it's raining, you might get sad or frustrated. Or if you see your bank account balance as one balance, you might get happy. But then when it goes down, you get sad or frustrated because you're not getting your craving fulfilled. You can't get your cravings fulfilled permanently. It's not possible. So as long as you allow craving, desire, attachment to reside in the mind, your mind's going to go up and down throughout your life. But you can get to the point where you've eliminated this unwholesome quality of craving, desire, attachment. And we use meditation, specifically this breathing mindfulness meditation, to be able to train the mind to be able to do that. So that when you're in daily life and say you're walking in the mall and you see something that the mind's longing and yearning for, instead of chasing after it and thinking that it's going to provide some lasting satisfaction, you can decide, is this a want or is it a need? Do I really need this thing, or is it the mind just wanting it and chasing after it? And if it's just chasing after it, if it's a want, you can cut that off and let it go if you have mindfulness and concentration, and if you train your mind to let go. So in meditation, you're cutting off and letting go anything that comes up. And this is helping you to gain discipline and control of the mind. But in daily life, you're only cutting off and eliminating unwholesome qualities that arise, or unwholesome thoughts that arise in the mind. In daily life, if you have a thought to take your mom out to dinner, or you'd like to help some orphanage, or do something that would be generous or something like this, go for it, right? That's a wholesome thing. You don't need to cut that off. So we're training in one way in meditation where we're cutting off everything and anything, realizing that you will have a thought. You're not trying to eliminate your thoughts in meditation. What you're trying to do is build that mindfulness and concentration and be able to easily let go. So that now in daily life, when you're out and about and you're noticing the anger starting to arise, or the frustration, or the stress, or the guilt, or shame, or the boredom, or the loneliness is starting to arise, you can cut that off and let it go. If you've been training your mind in meditation regularly, you'll be able to do that. But that's something that you need to slowly build up to, where you build the ability of the mind to be able to notice when you have a thought and to be able to easily let it go if there's an unwholesome thought, or there's anger or frustration, or some of these other strong feelings that the path to enlightenment is to guide you to eliminate. And when you do this enough in meditation and you're doing it enough in daily life, you eventually get to the point where anger no longer arises. You've eliminated the causes and conditions that are leading to these discontent feelings to arise, namely craving, desire, attachment, this longing, yearning. So the mind, when it's pulling towards something, you may get that thing and you get happy, but then that happiness is going to arise, it's going to change and fade away, and ultimately leave you feeling dissatisfied. Or you're not going to get what you want, and then you're going to be frustrated and angry or irritated or some other discontent feeling. So this path to enlightenment is to arise wisdom of how to eliminate these pollutions like craving, desire, attachment. And the way you get to wisdom is by learning something, investigating it, examining it, by reflecting on it to independently verify it, and then you practice it. And through through practicing the teachings that you've independently verified, you now have transformed the mind, uprooting these pollutions out of the mind. And that's where you see the peace and the calmness, the serenity, the contentedness, and the joy shining through in the mind. And these qualities of enlightenment gradually increase as you're gradually decreasing the pollutions in the mind. One of the biggest myths about the life story of the Buddha is that people think he sat under a tree, he meditated, and then he instantly got to enlightenment. This isn't actually true. And if you think this way, then you probably spend a whole lot of time doing meditation, which you need to do some meditation, but you can't just meditate your way to enlightenment. You're going to need other things besides meditation. And that's why we share teachings, to be able to help you understand the entire path to enlightenment. So before I move on and share these teachings that I'm going to share with you today in chapter 14, I'd like to see if you guys have any questions on meditation, because sometimes students are working on developing their meditation practice, or if you've been learning other places and I've shared things that are different than what you've learned other places and you're curious, why I'm sharing one thing versus another, you can ask any and all questions that you like. If you'd like to ask questions here at the temple, we have the microphones that you would, if you wouldn't mind using the microphone. That way the people online will be able to hear you. And if you're online, if you could put your question into Facebook, YouTube, or Zoom, or in Zoom, you can electronically raise your hand and ask any questions that you like. So yes, ma'am, you have a question.
Just a very quick question. So I was wondering, so you said the breathing meditation is something you should practice every day. What about the loving kindness meditation? How does that fit in, or how often should we practice?
Yes, same thing. When you're building up your meditation practice, you'd like to build up to 2 or 3 sessions per day. And out of those 2 or 3 sessions per day, it would be wise to make at least one of them loving kindness meditation. And what I usually recommend people to do is make the morning session a loving kindness meditation, because that way when you go out into the world, you've cultivated your loving kindness, and now you can interact through your intention, speech, and actions being more loving and kind. And that's where you'll see the real transformation in your relationships. Because right now, if you're being bitter and harsh and hostile in any of your relationships, this is causing you difficulties in those relationships. What you learn on the path to enlightenment, among other things, is that the mind is causing its own discontent feelings. Your mind is causing its own anger and frustration. But when you don't understand that, you might be bitter and harsh and hostile towards people, feeling like you're justified in your anger and that somebody else is causing you to be angry. So you might be bitter and hostile and harsh with them. And the other thing you might do is you might push people away, or you might put your expectations on people, trying to control people to do things your way. So as long as you're experiencing the misunderstanding or the confusion or the lack of wisdom of what's truly causing these feelings, you might push people away. You might be bitter and harsh and hostile with them. You might put your expectations on them. And now this is hindering you from having harmonious relationships with all beings around you. So I would encourage you to do the loving kindness in the morning, so that when you go out, you can be more loving and kind with the people around you. You're welcome. If you guys have more questions, you're welcome to ask them. I'm just going to reset the camera here. I'm noticing that our camera's frozen up. Are there any more questions here that you guys have on meditation before we move into talking about the 4 healthy mental states? Okay, I'm not seeing any more questions anywhere. So I'm going to move into talking about the 4 healthy mental states, but let me just do some adjustments here. Okay. So these four healthy mental states are oftentimes referred to as the Brahma-viharas. This is a way that you might hear people refer to them. The word Brahma-vihara comes from the lifetime of the Buddha. There was a practice of Brahmin who were worshiping God during this time frame. A Brahmin is like a Hindu priest. And these Brahmin were doing rites and rituals and ceremonies and worship, but they were also teaching a certain amount of moral conduct and other kind of healthy mental things. But mainly what they were focused on was rites, rituals, ceremonies, and worship. And the teachings of the Buddha doesn't have any rites, rituals, ceremonies, or worship. That even though if you're in Buddhist environments and they're doing rites, rituals, ceremonies, and worship, this isn't what the Buddha actually taught. He taught you to train your mind. So during the lifetime of the Buddha, there were various teachings that he taught and brought a lot of clarity to help people understand how to get to enlightenment. But there were also teachings that other people were teaching that he knew that they were part of the path to enlightenment. So those were incorporated into his teachings. So he incorporated these Brahma-viharas into his teachings because he knew that they were important in order to help somebody get to enlightenment. Like I mentioned, a Brahmin is a Hindu priest, and they were practicing these teachings of worshiping God. So this word Brahma-vihara, what it actually means is to abide with God or dwell with God. Even though in the teachings of the Buddha, he didn't make God a central figure in his teachings. He does talk about God, he mentions God, but he doesn't make God a central role because God's not the one who determines whether you get to enlightenment or not. It's your decisions that determine that. But these Brahmin were teaching this, so that's kind of the origin of this word. Brahma-vihara is how to abide or dwell with God. But in reality, what you're looking to accomplish through learning and practicing these Brahma-viharas is it's actually helping you to antidote specific symptoms that are in your mind. The way that the Buddha taught it is to cultivate the mind with these four healthy mental states. And by doing so, it remedies certain symptoms or antidotes certain aspects of the mind that is being experienced in the unenlightened state. So there are certain feelings that I've mentioned as part of discontentedness that are being experienced. And as I go, what I'm going to do is I'm going to share with you what the actual healthy mental state is, explaining that to you. Then I'm going to explain to you what it's actually antidoting, what it's actually fixing, what the remedy is. And then I'm going to explain to you how to cultivate that particular mental state. And then I'm going to open up to questions to see what you guys have about each one of these mental states as I share them with you. And this is what's going to help you to transform your mind. There's other teachings that you need, like the Eightfold Path is the core central teaching that an individual would need to learn and develop in order to get to enlightenment. But here, this is something that plugs into the Eightfold Path. If someone has been learning with me for a period of time, we usually start with the three universal truths, the Four Noble Truths, all the factors of the Eightfold Path. That's really the place to start. But this is chapter 14, where this plugs into the Eightfold Path. But even if you haven't learned the Eightfold Path, you can learn these healthy mental states and how to cultivate them and actually antidote some of the symptoms that you're experiencing in the mind. So let me show you what I mean by this. This first healthy mental state, or this first Brahma-vihara, it's called loving kindness. What this is active goodwill towards all beings without judgment, a genuine interest in seeing all beings be well. Some people refer to this as metta, which this is the Pali word. I use as much English as I can in order to teach people the teachings of the Buddha. There's really only two words that I still need to use that are Pali because they don't translate into just one English word. So you'll see me using English because that way people can readily understand what it is that I'm teaching, and you can get the benefits and results of practicing the teachings of the Buddha. But you might hear other people refer to this as metta. But I use this word loving kindness because that's what it actually is. This loving kindness is this active goodwill, this genuine interest in seeing all beings be well. And you're not judging others, trying to determine whether they deserve your loving kindness or not. Sometimes people are taught, like, don't respect that person until they respect you. They've got to respect you first before you respect them. Well, if everybody was doing that, nobody would be respecting anybody because everybody would be holding back, like, I'm not going to respect you until you respect me. Well, I'm not going to respect you until you respect me. Okay, so nobody's respecting anybody. So if you're judging people to determine, do they deserve my loving kindness or not? Oh, they don't deserve it, so I'm not going to be loving and kind. This would be very unwise, and your mind isn't fully developed your loving kindness. You would like to get to the point where you're always practicing loving kindness, having this genuine interest in seeing all beings be well, and you have this active goodwill without judging others to determine whether they deserve your goodwill or not. But instead, you're just being loving and kind with all beings around you. All beings. What this is antidoting anger, hatred, ill will, and the lesser versions like frustration, irritation, annoyance. By the time you get to enlightenment, you won't even have the slightest dislike towards another being. If you have certain cravings, certain wants, certain expectations in your mind that you want other people to be a certain way, then there are certain people that you like and you think they're great and they're marvelous because they do everything you expect and everything you want. But then when there's people that do things you don't like and that are disagreeable to you, you'll dislike that person. You might not hate them, but you dislike them because they're not doing what you want them to do. But not everyone's going to function in the way that you want them to function. So in order for you to fully cultivate this loving kindness, you need to get to the point where not only have you eliminated the anger, hatred, and ill will, but even the slightest dislike, that you no longer have craving and longing and yearning, wanting people, expecting people to be a certain way. It would be wonderful if everyone in the world was polite, kind, friendly, and respectful. But that's not the world that we live in. Because of impermanence, there's going to be people who are disrespectful. There's going to be people who are impolite. And if you hate them just because they're struggling with certain aspects of their life, that means your mind still has hate. You still have anger. You would like to eradicate this hatred out of the mind because it's only burdening you. Holding on to hatred in your mind for things that people are doing around you or people that have done things in the past, holding on to this hatred and anger is like trying to burn somebody else by holding a hot coal in your hand. If you're holding a hot coal in your hand and you're trying to burn somebody else, you're the only one being burned. So if there's things that have happened in your past and you're holding on to the anger and resentfulness, thinking that this is your way to get back at that person, you're actually not getting back at them. You're actually harming yourself. So you can liberate your mind from this anger, hatred, ill will, the frustration, the agitation, the annoyance, even the dislike that might be in the mind by practicing and fully cultivating the mind with loving kindness or this genuine interest in seeing all beings be well. It doesn't mean that you agree with what everyone's doing just because you have loving kindness and you're cultivating this goodwill towards them. It doesn't mean you agree with everything mom does or dad does or brother or sister does or your neighbor or your coworker. You're not going to ever agree with everything that everybody does. You're only ever going to agree 100% with one person in your life. Do you know who that person is? Who is it? Yeah, yourself, right? That's the only person you're ever going to agree with 100% fully. Right? There's other people in your life you're going to disagree with, but disagreement doesn't mean disrespect. Disagreement doesn't mean that you hate them. Disagreement doesn't mean that they're being disrespectful to you. It just means they've had different experiences in life. So of course they have different opinions. Of course they have different views because they've had different experiences. So if your expectation is that in order to be friendly with somebody, in order to be loving and kind with somebody, they have to agree with you, then you can only agree with one person. That's the only person you can agree with because everyone else you're going to disagree with at some point. So getting to a point where you can love the person while understanding you disagree with the decisions that they make in some situations, that's okay, right? You can love a person, you can love an individual, you can love a being while disagreeing with some of the choices and decisions they might choose to make. You might disagree that somebody has murdered somebody. You might disagree that somebody has raped somebody. You might disagree with this decision, and maybe you would choose not to do those things. But having hatred towards that person doesn't actually help you at all. So you can get to a point where you've cultivated your mind where you can love the person. Loving the person means that you have a genuine interest in seeing them be well. It doesn't mean that you agree with everything that they do. So you can get to a point where you love the person. You have an interest in seeing this person be well, but you disagree with the decisions and the choices that they're making. So yeah, maybe this person needs to go to prison. Maybe they need to go to jail. Maybe they need to get some help in some way or another. And that's part of maybe loving them and seeing them be well, is that they need to go experience that in order to experience the results of their decisions. But the hatred towards that individual doesn't actually solve anything for you. That's actually the problem, is having the hatred and the anger. So the loving kindness is going to help to uproot that out of the mind. And the way that you accomplish that is you train your mind in meditation through loving kindness meditation. This is a specific meditation that you can employ in your practice to cultivate this genuine interest in seeing all beings be well and having this active goodwill without judgment. It's done differently than what we did this morning. This morning we did breathing mindfulness meditation, and this is to cultivate mindfulness, concentration, and eliminate craving, desire, attachment. And that's one of the primary trainings that you're doing on the path to enlightenment. But there's this other training of loving kindness meditation where you sit in meditation and you do affirmations in the mind. May I be peaceful. May I be safe. May I be well. May I be free of all discontentedness and the suffering it causes. You do this on the out breath. And what you're doing is you're training your mind to have loving kindness for this being, who you are now. Because sometimes people hate themselves, or they have agitation towards themselves, or you might judge yourself being degrading and diminishing. You might have negative self-talk in the mind. And if you have this is normal, but you can eliminate it. And it's loving kindness meditation that's going to help you to do this. So by having loving kindness for this being who you are now, and you learn how to have a loving relationship with yourself, you can get to the point where you also learn how to have loving kindness for others. If you have challenges loving yourself, you're going to have challenges loving other people too. And you're going to find that this is challenging in your relationships. So when we do loving kindness meditation, we start with I, and we do this ring where may I be peaceful. And we do this very slowly on the out breath. And then we breathe in really slowly. And then on the next out breath, may I be safe. And then you go through these affirmations, may I be well. And then may I be free of all discontentedness and the suffering it causes. Then you expand into wider and wider rings where you include some people that you currently have loving kindness for. Maybe your parents or your siblings or your life partner or your children or something like this. You include a couple of rings. Maybe may mom be peaceful, or may dad be peaceful, or may my parents, or may Barbara or Susan or Bob, or some names, specific individuals. You customize this meditation based on individuals that you currently have loving kindness for. And you do like maybe a ring or two of those individuals. Then you do like a ring or two of individuals that you're more neutral about, maybe coworkers or neighbors or something like this. But then ultimately you get to some rings where you have anger for these people. You have resentment. You have bitterness and hostility and animosity. And maybe when you're around those people, you find it very difficult to be loving and kind. And you include those individuals in your meditation so you can transform your mind. You're not trying to change them through your meditation. This isn't actually possible. You can't change other people through your meditation. If this was possible, there would be no prisons. There would be no murders. There would be no rapes, because people like us would get together, we would meditate, and we would change everybody miraculously through our meditation. So you're not sending loving kindness to other people and trying to change them. You're actually focusing this on your own mind, transforming your own mind so that you can get to the point where you are more loving and kind. So for example, when I first started learning these teachings, I had a lot of resentment towards my mom for things that happened when I was growing up. So I would do this meditation starting with myself, because I also had a lot of negative self-talk at one time. I would start with myself. May I be peaceful, safe, well, and free of discontentedness. And then eventually I would do mom, and I would do that regularly. For about 6 months, I noticed it took to the point where then when I was around mom, I could be more loving and kind. The transformation, yes, is happening in meditation, but where you're really transforming your mind and fully cultivating something like loving kindness is in your practice. Because now, through training the mind in meditation, I could then start spending time with mom in a more loving and kind way. And our relationship really transformed. Where before I was very judgmental, I was very resentful, I was very angry. It was only a matter of time before something happened and me and my mom would blow up in a conversation. Well, that's the way it was before I started training my mind. After training the mind, then when I started spending time around mom, I could be more loving and kind. And she would sometimes still be a bit resentful towards me as well. That was my experience, that it was coming towards me. But then I would do something different, where in the past, if she was bitter and harsh with me, I would be bitter and harsh back. It would just keep this anger and hostility bouncing around in the room. It's kind of like a rubber ball. If mom would pick up the rubber ball of anger or hatred and throw it around the room, I'd be like, oh, okay, I'm going to pick it up too, and I'm going to throw it around the room. And then she would throw it around the room, and I'd throw it around the room. And next thing you know, we'd have a big eruption and, a big argument, right? Well, that didn't solve anything. So as I started training my mind, learning to be more loving and kind, when mom would pick up the rubber ball of anger and hatred and throw it around the room, I would just watch it roll to the corner and lose its energy. I wouldn't be hateful back. Sometimes we'd be talking on the phone and she would say something that I thought was angered or hatred. And I would say, Mom, I'm going to get off the phone now. I see that, you're interested in talking in that way with me. And I realize that I've talked that way with you in the past, but I'm no longer interested in talking with you that way. I value our relationship too much, and I would like to get to a point where we can be more loving and kind with each other. So I'm going to get off the phone and let you think about what you just shared and what you said, and we can talk another time. I love you, Mom. Goodbye. Right? And we would get off the phone, and sometimes I wouldn't talk to her for 3 months or 6 months. And then eventually we would talk again. And then slowly but surely, Mom started being more loving and kind because she realized that her son wasn't being angry and hateful anymore. It was her that was being that way. So I would just kind of get off the phone and kind of walk in the other direction. And by the time she died in 2017, all of our conversations and relationship was very loving and kind. But I had to do the work first, because there was this log jam where mom and son were very resentful and very angry with each other. And I needed to pull out this log of anger and hatred and ill will and all these other things like frustration. I had to pull that out of the mind so that then I could be more loving and kind. So this is how you transform the mind, is through loving kindness meditation. You kind of fill up the gas tank. And now you go out into the world, and through your intentions, your speech, and your actions, you become more loving and kind. Where right now, if somebody's bitter and hostile and aggressive with you, maybe you go down this path of bitterness and hostility. And that's maybe a well-worn path in some situations, depending on how you've experienced life. This might be a well-worn path. The grass might be pushed back. You might be like a dirt trail. The bushes and the branches might be pushed back. Maybe you've gone down this path many times, and you know where that path ends. It ends in broken relationships. And if you're no longer interested in those broken relationships and continuing to experience the same thing over and over and over again, you're going to need to do something different, because doing the same things that you have been doing, you're just going to keep going down the same path. And the path is just going to keep getting worn out more and more and more. So what you're doing with loving kindness meditation and cultivating these healthy mental states, not just loving kindness, but all of them, is it's like getting out a machete and you're forging this new path. You're breaking through this new direction. You're breaking down the bushes and the stickers, and you're trying to create this new path in the mind. You're essentially trying to rewire the mind so that it no longer goes down this path of bitterness and hostility and animosity. And as you go down this new path, it's going to be a struggle. It's going to be a challenge, because you're not used to going down this path of loving kindness. Maybe right now, when somebody's bitter and harsh and hostile with you, it feels so much more normal to go down the path of bitterness and hostility and aggression, because that's the way they are with you. So that's the path you would like to go down, right? But you know where that ends. It ends not only in broken relationships, but your mind has all been out of shape. Right? And you have to deal with that for many hours or maybe many days. You have to deal with the mind being agitated. So now if you start to do something different, which is this loving kindness meditation, and now going down this path of loving kindness, when somebody's bitter and harsh and hostile with you, like my mom was in some cases, I would go down this path of loving kindness. And now, being more loving and kind, you'll see that because that's what you're putting out, that's what will come back to you. Slowly but surely, as you're no longer being hateful, then you're being loving and kindness will come back to you. But as long as you're putting out hate and bitterness and hostility and animosity, that's what's going to be coming back to you. This is the cause and effect, or the action and result. You can't extinguish anger and hatred on somebody else's part, by you being bitter and angry and harsh to them. The way you extinguish anger in your life is you've got to extinguish it in your own mind first. So the loving kindness meditation is a tool or a technique that helps you to rewire the mind to be more loving and kind. It's not a miraculous magical pill that you do at one time and your mind is fixed. Even 1 week or 2 weeks, it's not going to completely fix the mind. It's going to need gradual, consistent, ongoing training. And as you're training your mind in this way, each day you're not going to know how much anger you're wearing away. But when it's completely gone, you'll know that when it's been 1 year, 2 years, 3 years, and you haven't been angry, you haven't been frustrated, you haven't been irritated or annoyed with anybody at all, you'll know that it's been completely exhausted. But each day when you're meditating, each day when you're going out into the world and practicing the intentions, speech, and actions to be loving and kind, you're not going to know how much of the anger you've worn away. It's kind of like a digging tool. If you have a digging tool with a wooden handle and you're digging with this tool every day, you're wearing away the wood every day of that wooden handle. You're not going to know how much wood you wear away from the handle each day. But when this handle is completely exhausted and it needs to be replaced, you're going to know that this handle needs to be replaced. And it's the same thing that when you're doing these types of teachings or these techniques and you're implementing these tools in your life and developing your life practice, you're not going to know each individual day how much anger and hatred or frustration you've worn away. But when it's completely gone, you will know that, just like the digging tool. So you use loving kindness meditation and practicing loving kindness in daily life in order to cultivate and transform the mind to be loving and kind. And then you also use this right mindfulness. This is something that I taught as part of the Eightfold Path. What right mindfulness is, you can think about it generally as awareness of mind. It goes deeper than that, where there's the 4 foundations of mindfulness, and you learn this as part of your training on the path to enlightenment. You would ultimately need to understand all 4 aspects of mindfulness, which is being aware of the bodily sensations, because before you get angry or frustrated, there's some bodily sensation that's occurring. You might notice some tightening in the chest. You might notice some pain in the heart, maybe some tightening in the throat. You might notice some heat in the face or pressure in the skull. These are all bodily sensations that are cluing you in, hey, you're about to get angry. Hey, you're about to get frustrated. And you can take action right there. If you notice those bodily sensations and you have awareness of mind, you can cut off and let go of any arising discontent feelings as a bodily sensation. But if you miss it there, then it's going to move to the next foundation, which is a feeling. It's now going to become a feeling. The mind is now angry. The mind is now frustrated. And you can cut it off and let it go there too, and that'll save you a whole lot of problems. Because the next thing is that if you don't cut it off as a feeling, it's going to start affecting the condition of the mind. Have you ever been angry for several hours, or maybe like a day or two, or maybe a week or two? Of course you have, right? All of us have at some point, right? You've been angry and agitated for like several days or maybe a week or two. This is because you didn't cut it off as a bodily sensation. You might not even been aware that that exists. You didn't cut it off as a feeling, and it started affecting the condition of your mind. And then it starts feeding what's called a mental object. This is a deeply rooted container in the mind. In this example, it's anger, hatred, ill will. And now this deeply rooted container of ill will, it can arise at any point in your life. So by transforming the mind through cultivating right mindfulness, or mindfulness of these 4 foundations of mindfulness, you can actually catch these discontent feelings as a bodily sensation, cut them off and let them go there, and you've actually preserved the mind, that you never had the opportunity to experience the anger or the frustration. You're not suppressing the feeling. You're actually cutting it off before it ever becomes a feeling. Sometimes when I describe this, people are like, isn't that suppressing the feeling? Nope. You're actually cutting it off as a bodily sensation before it even becomes a feeling. You're not allowing the mind to have a conditioned feeling. That's the whole problem in the unenlightened state, is the mind's kind of wired to base its inner feelings on some condition. That if it's sunny outside, you get happy and excited. But if it's raining outside, maybe you get angry or frustrated or agitated. You're forming an inner feeling based on some condition. So when you're noticing those bodily sensations coming up, you can actually cut it off right there before it ever becomes a feeling. This is restraining the mind and pulling it back. This is like if you were in a boat going from Indonesia to Australia, you would like to prevent the water from ever coming into the boat. Because once the water gets into the boat, you've got a real problem to deal with. You've got to get that water out. So the same thing is true is once the anger comes into the mind as a feeling, you've got a real problem to deal with. You've got to get rid of it. So if you can cut it off or prevent it from ever coming into the mind as a bodily sensation, you've preserved the mind and you can maintain your peacefulness and joy. And if you do this enough, you can get to the point where the anger never arises because you've eliminated the cravings, desires, attachments. So this is why you're practicing breathing mindfulness meditation, where you're not observing the thoughts, you're not labeling the thoughts, you're not welcoming the thoughts into the mind during your meditation, but when the mind moves off the breath, you're cutting them off and letting them go. So that now in daily life, when you notice those bodily sensations arising, you can cut them off and let them go. And you can transform the mind and eliminate the anger, the frustration, and all these other feelings that are associated with this poison of anger, hatred, and ill will, and those lesser versions. And it's loving kindness meditation that's going to help you to transform the mind to no longer be bitter and harsh and hostile and having animosity and resentfulness towards others. You need the breathing mindfulness meditation to eliminate the cravings, because it's because of cravings that anger is arising. When you have that longing, yearning, the craving, the desire, the attachment, if you get what you want, you get those pleasant feelings. But when you don't get what you want, that bitterness and hostility arises in the mind, and now you might vent it through your speech or your actions towards another individual. And as long as you're putting that out towards people, then that's what's going to come back to you. So you need the breathing mindfulness meditation in there in order to knock down the cravings. And that's going to automatically help you to eliminate some of your anger and hatred and these lesser feelings like agitation and annoyance and others. But you also need this loving kindness meditation to really transform the mind and uproot this mental object or this fetter or this pollution or this taint or this defilement of anger, hatred, and ill will. So this right mindfulness is something that you're practicing on a daily basis. Yes, you're developing it in meditation, but in daily life, as you're going out and about in the world, you're practicing awareness of mind so that you can be aware of what's going on in the mind. And then you apply what's called right effort, that whenever you see unwholesome qualities in the mind, you cut those off, you let them go. And when you see wholesome qualities in the mind, you support those, encourage those, don't allow them to fade. So this is how you fully cultivate the mind with loving kindness. Is you're practicing loving kindness meditation, and then you're practicing mindfulness in your daily life, that whenever you see any of these discontent feelings arising, you apply right effort to cut those off and let them go. And you apply right effort to cultivate the wholesome quality of loving kindness, to be loving and kind. So in your daily life, the way you apply this is wherever you see you're being bitter and harsh and hostile and having animosity or frustrated or agitated, if you understand those are the symptoms, those are the part of the problem, now you understand the solution or the remedy, which is to bring in the loving kindness, the active goodwill, the genuine interest in seeing all beings be well. This is where some people describe the Buddha like a doctor, that there's a certain symptom and then he provides this prescription. And while the Buddha can be described that way, you can actually become your own doctor. Whereas if you understand the symptom and you understand the remedy or the prescription, you can actually apply it. So if you have mindfulness and awareness of mind and you observe that your mind's being agitated or annoyed or frustrated or having anger or some other feeling like that, when you notice that symptom coming up in the mind, if you know the antidote, you can bring in the loving kindness to be loving and kind. And now you can transform your mind, and then your relationships can transform, because now you're being more loving and kind in your relationships. And you'll see that they'll really blossom and they'll really improve. So this is the first healthy mental state called loving kindness. It's not going to take me this long to explain each one of these, but I spend a lot of time on this one because it's really important, and it actually helps you to be able to then cultivate all the others as well. Compassion is the concern for the misfortune of others. The opposite of compassion is indifference. Whereas if you had indifference or you had worry or anxiety, this is two opposite sides of the spectrum. Whereas if you saw somebody struggling and having misfortune and you were like, who cares? That's their karma. It doesn't matter. Like, that's their decisions. So what? Doesn't affect me. I don't care. That would be indifference, right? But then the other side of that is you might want people to be so well. You might have this longing, yearning, this craving, this expectation of wanting everybody in the world to be well, that when you see somebody experience maybe poverty or famine or sickness or illness, you might become worried or having anxiety. And each side of these, the mind isn't content. It's not peaceful. It's not joyful. So you would like to bring the mind to the middle. And compassion is how to bring the mind to the middle in this particular topic, where you have concern for the misfortune of others. You're not worried, you're not having anxiety, and you're not indifferent, where you could care less. You bring the mind to the middle, where you have concern for their misfortune. And when you're practicing loving kindness meditation and you're practicing loving kindness in daily life, this is going to naturally help you to develop more compassion. But you're going to need to actively cultivate compassion in your daily life. So in daily life, where you see indifference or you see the mind being worried or having anxiety over the misfortunes of others, that's your mindfulness to be able to be aware of that. So that's why you're using breathing mindfulness meditation to start being aware of the mind. And now when you see the mind either indifferent or having worry or anxiety, you now bring in the compassion, the concern for their misfortune. If you have worry, the mind typically sees all the problems in the world. Because you see all the problems, your mind is worried. But when you understand what the solutions are to those problems, then you can actually just have concern. Because part of the solution that you understand is that everybody needs to decide for themselves to cultivate wisdom and improve their life. You can't force somebody else to be well. So if mom or brothers or sisters or somebody that you don't know on the street is having difficulties, you can't force them to improve their life and make better decisions. You can offer guidance, you can offer support, you can offer resources. These are things that we can offer out of our generosity, but we can't force somebody else to be well. It's through their own decisions that are going to determine whether they are well or they aren't well. So when you come to understand that, then you understand that any struggles or difficulties anybody is experiencing, it's based on that individual's decision. So we can be there to support and encourage them and help them and provide things that they might need. But ultimately, an individual needs to stand up on their own 2 feet and start making wise decisions through cultivating wisdom and through training the mind. So when you see all the problems in the world, your mind might worry. But when you understand the solutions to those problems, which is each individual needs to choose for themselves to stand up on their own 2 feet and cultivate wisdom, then you can understand that you can maintain your concern for them. But in order for that person to be well, they're going to need to make decisions. You can't solve their problems. They're going to need to do that. And you can be there to provide them support, to provide them guidance, maybe even resources if they need that for a period of time. But ultimately, they can't be dependent on you 100% because you are impermanent in their life. If you provided somebody everything they needed to sustain their life, well, when you're gone, they wouldn't be able to sustain their life because they don't know how to. So each individual needs to be able to stand up on their own feet. And you can maintain this concern for the misfortune of others. And in some cases, maybe you can help. In some cases, you can't. But ultimately, that individual needs to decide to make wise decisions and cultivate wisdom to improve their life. So when you notice with your mindfulness that this indifference or this worry or anxiety is coming into the mind, you can now arise this compassion where you have concern for their misfortune. And that doesn't mean that you can help every single person in every situation. In some situations, you're going to be able to help people. In other situations, you're not going to be able to. And that's impermanence. You're going to need to be comfortable with that. In some situations, you will be able to help them. In other situations, you won't be able to. So this mindfulness and this right effort is part of the Eightfold Path. This is something students would have learned how to develop and cultivate and then practice as part of this group learning program. And if you haven't learned that yet, there's videos, there's courses and retreats that I teach where I have books even and audiobooks to help you learn these things. You can learn these things as well. But here you can see that both of these, loving kindness and compassion, the way to cultivate it is with this right mindfulness, to be aware of the symptom and then be able to apply the antidote, which depending on what the symptom is, the antidote might either be loving kindness or compassion. Do you guys have any questions on either of these two? Yes, sir. Would you mind using the mic? Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so I'm wondering in the moment about loving kindness when someone is attacking you in a way, physically or non-physically. Can hurt quite a bit, and you might not be able to be loving and kindness towards them in that moment.
Sure. So you can defend this physical body without having anger and hatred in the mind. And you'll actually do a much better job at it, because when you allow that anger and hatred to come into the mind, it's polluting the mind and you're going to make unwise decisions because the mind's shaken up. But what you're doing on the path is you're learning how to maintain your calmness and composure, especially in difficult situations. That's something we're going to be studying next, which is equanimity. So when you cultivate equanimity, even if somebody happened to be attacking you, you would be able to maintain your calmness and composure, and you'd be able to address this situation with wise decision making. And if that means defending this physical body, then you can still do that with loving kindness. And the way that I would practice loving kindness and compassion in that situation is do as least amount of harm as possible to be able to stop this event from happening. And you can do that without having anger and hatred and ill will in the mind. Of course, it takes training, but you can actually accomplish that. Any other questions? Yes, ma'am.
Hello. So when you're practicing loving kindness, and then again, like you said, you thinking about everything and everyone around, and also extend to the whole world, and all the sadness and suffering is happening because to live is suffering. But when you something really big in the scale as a part of the world is suffering, and it makes you really sad and want to do something, you mentioned that, and you kind of be aware of that sensation and come back. But how to to practice loving kindness, we cannot cut off ourselves from the society and the community. And it's just I was wondering, how would you move through all the suffering in the world, and how to not really sway by sadness, anger, but you still want to take action in the world. How it's very difficult to not be driven by the emotion to take action. So I was just wanted to hear more on that.
Sure. So if you experience sadness when you see suffering in the world, this is because the mind is craving for the world to be a certain way. The mind is longing, yearning, and wanting everybody in the world to be peaceful. So there's a difference between wanting and expecting. That's like the craving, the longing, the yearning, versus you have a goal or an objective or an aspiration. You aspire for everyone to be peaceful and joyful, and that'd be wonderful. But you understand when you're practicing this middle way, in order for people to get to peacefulness, they have to make decisions to get to that. It's not you making decisions for others. It's each individual making a decision for themselves to train their mind and get to peacefulness. But if you have a craving, if you have a want, a longing, a yearning, an expectation that I want everyone in the world to be peaceful and joyful, then you'll be sad when you see people suffering. So the world doesn't have to suffer. individuals are choosing to suffer because they don't have the wisdom of how to train their mind to get to the peacefulness and the joy. So the first thing would be to eliminate your craving, desire, attachment. To have this loving kindness for others, you need to have loving kindness for this being first. And as long as you go out into the world to try to help others with craving, desire, attachment, and a lack of loving kindness for this being who you are, then yeah, you're going to experience sadness and frustration. But you can eliminate the craving, desire, attachment in the mind while still maintaining the loving kindness and compassion and being interested to help others. So you'd like to bring it to a goal, an objective, an interest to help others without the craving, desire, attachment. Because if you go out into the world with this longing and yearning to help people, you're going to find out real quick, like, whoa, there's so many billions of people in the world that need help, and you can't help them all. And you'll feel really conflicted inside, and you'll get sad and sad and sad. But when you can bring the mind to the middle, where you have this goal to gradually help people as you can, and you know that you need to do that without craving, desire, attachment, you can actually be more successful because you won't get depleted. You won't feel exhausted at the end of your day, like, oh my goodness, I only helped 50 people. My goal was to help 500. Well, then when you start helping 500 people, you're like, oh my God, this isn't enough anymore. I need to help 5,000 people. The mind's just going to want more and more and more and more because of the craving. So you can gradually work towards helping people, but realize that you can only help the people that are interested in helping themselves. So that's like me. I'm very interested in seeing the world be peaceful and joyful, but I can only help people that decide to show up and to learn, right? And that choose to practice the teachings. So you can gradually work towards a goal and be very successful. Whereas if you have craving, desire, attachment, your mind will be shaken up. You'll be exhausted, depleted, burned out, sad, frustrated, agitated, and you won't be able to sustain your ability to help other people. So the middle way is what will actually allow you to help others. But to get to the middle way, you've got to help this being first, who you are now. And that's what's going to ultimately provide you the capability in your mind to then be able to help others. You're welcome. Yes, ma'am.
So I understand that how breathing mindfulness meditation works, like it helps the mind to cut off. It helps the mind to be more mindful, but I don't understand like how loving kindness meditation works under the hood, and like how what does it change? How does it help the mind, and what things are changing with those affirmations that we are doing?
Sure. So those individual pollutions that the Buddha discovered that we refer to as the 10 fetters or taints or defilements or pollutions, these are 10 individual pollutions that the Buddha discovered, and then he provides solutions of how to uproot them. So what the loving kindness meditation is doing is it's like a jackhammer chipping away at the ill will. That's one of the fetters, the 5th fetter. So as long as that mental object or that fetter or the taint or the pollution or defilement of ill will is in the mind, it's only a matter of time before some craving gets triggered and now that ill will arises. But if you're using the loving kindness meditation and practicing loving kindness in daily life, you're wearing away that ill will. I think of it almost like a jackhammer, breaking that up out of the mind so that now when there's no ill will, then your mind isn't going to become angry and bitter and hostile in situations where you don't get what you want. Eventually, you would like to eliminate the wants, the longing, the yearning, the expectations. That's the central desire. That's why those 2 fetters are together, number 4 and 5. So ultimately, you're working to eliminate the central desire, but you also need to break up that ill will so that if a central desire is triggered, the ill will won't arise. So on your way to enlightenment, you can eliminate the ill will and get to the point where ill will is completely eliminated, but you still have some central desire in the mind. And now when the central desire arises, you're discontent. Maybe you're agitated or annoyed, but you don't have ill will towards others. You don't have aggression or hostility or bitterness towards others, because you understand with wisdom, anything that the mind is experiencing through discontentedness, your mind's causing it itself, and it would be unwise to have animosity towards others. So it's the loving kindness meditation that's breaking up that ill will so that that doesn't arise, because as soon as that arises, it pollutes the mind, and now your intentions, your speech, and your actions are going to emanate from that ill will. And what you would like to do is get to the point where your intentions, your speech, and your actions are emanating from loving kindness, where you're practicing that harmlessness, where you have this interest in seeing others be well. Because by having this interest in others be well, and you function in that way, now what comes back to you is also that same thing. Whereas if you went around being bitter and harsh and hostile, that's what's going to come back to you. So you're breaking up the ill will so that that's not arising and then polluting your intention, speech, and actions where they become unskillful.
Right. And also, like, so even when sensual desire is there, but there is no ill will, but then there is some agitation in the mind because of the sensual desire.
Mm-hmm.
And at that time, you cannot be loving and kind because you still have a little bit of agitation or something. So ill will is not gone there, or can you be like loving or kind with a little bit of agitation still there in your mind? So like, yeah.
So as this ill will is coming down, you can have some situations where you're having central desire and your mind is internally agitated, but you're not being outwardly aggressive or hostile or bitter towards anyone in that situation. And this agitation is coming from the central desire, but there's no ill will behind it. Even though I oftentimes think about the agitation as coming from this fetter of ill will, that's the agitation towards others when it's directed towards others. But you can just be agitated internally, kind of quietly frustrated and agitated, where you're not agitated with others. Maybe you're agitated with this being who you are yourself. So you can have situations where your mind's discontent, but you don't have animosity or bitterness towards others. And then because the mind still has central desire, it still has some ill will, you can, in other situations, have ill will towards others. So this is the gradual depleting of the pollution and the gradual increasing of the mind, getting more and more loving kindness and compassion.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Looks like we have another question.
So my question is, maybe it's a little bit personal, because I really want to know how to balance like loving kindness to yourself and to other people. Like sometimes I feel like loving kindness to this being, to yourself, is really important because that make you a whole person. And in my life, I'm like an energetic girl, so I feel like many people come to me and maybe searching for maybe love kindness or something like that. But I feel like sometimes I can't give them love kindness, or I feel it's hard if you are not yourself and you didn't give enough love kindness to yourself. And sometimes you're giving your love kindness to other people, but the energy doesn't like flow back. So yeah, I think it's hard for me to balance. So that's my question.
Sure.
Yeah.
So this is what we're going to be talking about next week, but I'll share a little bit of it now. Is part of the path to enlightenment is to learn what true love is, because as long as an individual doesn't know what true love is, they're not practicing true love, so they're not experiencing true love coming back to them. In the unenlightened state, we don't understand what true love is. We tend to be practicing craving, desire, attachment, and we think that that's love, but it's actually craving, desire, attachment masquerading as love. I'll give you an example. That typically when you meet somebody, like say a boyfriend or girlfriend, you guys come together. when you first meet this person, maybe you're physically attracted or intellectually attracted or attracted for any other reason. And now you guys start striking up conversations. You start going out together. You start spending time together. Maybe you have intimate contact. Maybe they're meeting your expectations and the things that you want. And you eventually get to the point where you say, I have fallen in love with you. And they say, oh, I've fallen in love with you too, right? And really what's truly happening here is you haven't actually fallen in love. There might be love in there, but you haven't actually fallen in love. What you've done is you fell into craving, desire, attachment. This person is meeting your expectations. There's certain conditions in your mind that you want, certain expectations you have. And now they're meeting all those expectations. And now you say, I love you. But then over time, eventually your expectations become bigger and bigger and bigger and longer list of expectations. And you get to the point where you say, I don't love you anymore. We need to end this relationship. I don't feel the passion anymore. Well, what it is you don't have that burning craving anymore, that your expectations have gotten so long that this person can't feasibly meet all your expectations. And now because they're not meeting your expectations, you say, I don't love you anymore because you're not doing what I want you to do. You're not doing what I expect. So that's craving, desire, attachment. That's the longing, yearning. The mind says, as long as you do what I want, I will say I love you. But if you stop doing what I want, I don't love you anymore. This relationship's over. That's not actually love. There might be love in there. What true love is I love you as you are. I just love you as you are. I'm not trying to change you. I'm not trying to control you. I'm not trying to put my expectations on you. I don't want anything from you. I would just like to see you be well. That's what loving kindness is. This is true love. I just have a genuine interest in seeing you be well, and I love you as you are. I'm here to support you. I'm here to encourage you. I have this unconditional love. I didn't fall in love with you, so I can't fall out of love with you, right? I love you as you are. I love everybody, everyone in the world. I have a genuine interest in seeing you be well. This is why I spend time to share the teachings to help you guys to understand how to get to this peaceful and joyful mental state, because I have this genuine interest in seeing you be well. I love you as you are, right? So that's unconditional love. But the problem is that this unconditional love that may be there in your mind, it gets tainted, it gets polluted with these cravings, desires, attachments, that you might have this unconditional love for mom or dad or brothers or sisters or boyfriends or girlfriends or life partners where you would like to see them be well. But then your cravings, desires, attachments pollute this, and you think, and then your ego gets involved, where your arrogance and your pride, and you think that you're right about everything. And you're like, I know what's best for mom, and mom should do it this way, or dad should do it this way, or brothers or sisters should do it this way. And now you try to control them and put your expectations on them and get them to do things your way. And then people might be doing that with you. Your parents might have done that with you, where they tried to control you to do things a certain way. So you grow up this way, thinking that this is love, because mom and dad are trying to maybe control you and try to get you to do things a certain way, or brothers and sisters. And now your mind has this confusion and this misunderstanding, thinking that this is what love is. And now you start practicing that. But when you're around people who are practicing true love, they don't have expectations. They don't have wants. They don't long and yearn. They don't put their pressure on you in order to get you to do something specific. Instead, they just love you as you are, and then they might support and encourage you to do things that you're interested in doing. But when we have these cravings, desires, attachments, we have these selfish desires, wanting things to be a certain way. And then we cast that onto other people, trying to control them to do things our way, thinking that that's the best way. Well, this isn't love, and it gets in the way. And as long as you're practicing that way, you might think you're putting out love, and then you feel like it's not coming back to you because your mind isn't actually practicing true love. You're practicing expectations. You're wanting something back. I will love you if you love me back. But that's not what love is. Love is, I just love you as you are. I don't want anything from you. I don't expect anything from you. I would just interested to see you be well. And then as you choose to do that, the natural law of karma is that love will come back to you. but you can't have any expectation that it will. Because as long as you have an expectation that love will come back to you, then it will not come back to you, because it's not true love. You're not practicing true love in that situation. So you need to learn how to have true love, what that is, and how to practice it. And that takes time to train the mind to do that, because you typically don't have relationships that are this way. As you're growing up, as you're in life, most people don't experience true love. Again, mom and dad and brothers and sisters, they have true love in there, but it gets tainted with these cravings, desires, attachments, where they're trying to control us and put their expectations on us. So we grow up thinking that that's love, and then we might start doing that with other people. So you may not have ever even been in a relationship where there's true love, where somebody doesn't want anything from you. Sometimes the very first relationship you ever have where somebody doesn't want anything from you is with your Buddhist teacher. That I don't want anything from you. I don't expect anything from you. I just love you as you are. I'm willing to help you no matter what. You could go out and murder somebody tomorrow. I don't advise it, but if you did, I would still love you. I would love you as you are. If you called me from jail and said, hey, David, can you come help me? I murdered somebody. I would like your advice. I would come to the jail and visit you and help you, right? I don't have an expectation of you. I wouldn't demean you. I wouldn't look down on you. Obviously, you made an unwise decision and you're asking for help, so I'm there to help you, right? No matter what you do in life, I'm there to help you. That's what true love really is. And you might not have experienced where nobody wants something from you. Maybe most of your relationships, people want something from you, even if it's just their own expectations of what they want you to do. So if you're not in relationships where there's true love, it's going to be very challenging for you to practice true love. And it's going to be very challenging for you to identify when somebody else is practicing true love, because you don't understand what this true love is. But the more you understand what it is, the more you practice it, you'll be able to identify when other people are practicing true love with you. So let me give you an example. Say you call somebody up, or say somebody calls you up, say your partner calls you up, they're on a business trip and they call you up and they say, oh, honey, I miss you so much. We've been away from each other for 2 weeks and I miss you so much. Right away, you might think, oh, they love me. That's actually not the love that's causing that. Them missing you is not actually love. They may love you, but it's not the love that's causing them to miss you. It's craving, desire, attachment. It's their longing, yearning. It's their holding on to you, wanting you to be permanent. And now when they're away from you, they're uncomfortable. They're missing you, right? So it's actually not love. So oftentimes we have difficulty spotting love and understanding what love is. Again, they may love you, but they have a certain craving, desire, attachment in their mind that's causing them to miss you. So you can get to the point where you see like, oh, that's craving, desire, attachment. I'm not interested in that. Oh, this is true love. Yes, that's what I'm interested in, and I'm going to practice that. And the more you practice true love, the more you'll see true love coming back to you. Make sense?
Yes, thank you so much.
Yeah. So that's chapter 15. So if you get this book, you can download it from the website for free. You can take it and go print it, or you can get printed versions here or on Amazon by just reimbursing us for the printing cost. Chapter 15 is all about true love and helping you understand what it is and how to practice it. And the more you do that, the more comfortable you'll get with it, and you'll have more and more sustaining, fulfilling, and satisfying relationships.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, you're welcome. There's another question back there. We have 2 mics that you guys can pass around, or you can pass around the one that we have out.
Hi, I have a question. It's very related to what you were talking about just now, the true love. Mm-hmm. I think the love my parents give me are very close to the true love that you described. That they are always very encouraging and accepting who I am. But now I got married, and my parents-in-law, they are not that way. Like my mother-in-law specifically, she's very aggressive and wants to control everything, like wants to control every aspect of our life. So we just had a huge fight last night that I told her it's our life, like it's our choice to decide what we do. And then she felt hurt and hurt us back. So I don't know how to get out of this kind of situation and how to practice loving kindness in a situation like that. Could you give me some advice?
Sure. Yeah, this is really common. So what's going on with mother-in-law is she's having certain cravings, certain desires, certain expectations of things that she wants from you and your husband. She wants you guys to be a certain way. She's having this craving, this longing, this yearning. And if you do what she wants, she'll get happy. But if you don't do what she wants, she'll get angry and frustrated, or using the words you use, I think she was maybe hostile or bitter with you guys, right? And that's her, what we call wrong view. She's associating her painful feelings of anger and frustration. She's associating it with you and thinking that you're the one causing her problems. And that's why her anger is arising and then it coming out towards you. But she doesn't understand that it's craving, desire, attachment that's causing her anger. It's not you that's causing her anger. It's not you causing her bitterness. It's her own cravings that are causing that. So you can't force somebody else to change. You can't fix your mother-in-law. She has to choose to do the work herself. So some things that you can do is, of course, train your mind. If you train your mind, you'll become more and more peaceful and just understanding that, okay, that's her cravings. I'm not going to adopt her cravings and her expectations. Even if you gave mother-in-law what she wants and you worked and gave it that to her, she'll be happy for a period of time, but then her expectations are going to change. And now she's going to want something else. And now you're going to work and go to that. And then she's going to be happy for a period of time. And then she's going to want more. And you're just going to be chasing her expectations. And it's going to drive you guys crazy, right? You're going to just be adopting her own cravings, desires, attachments. So what you would like to do is for yourselves is cultivate your wisdom, cultivate your mind so that when she's putting expectations on you, you're unaffected by it. You just realize that that's her expectations and you don't need to conform to that. One of the things that you can do is when she starts putting your expectations on you and she starts trying to control you is just change the subject to something else or walk away. Don't allow her to think that you're listening to her expectations and you're going to abide by her expectations, because then she's just going to keep putting her expectations on you. You can even say things, if you have control of the mind, you can even say things like, I don't know if you call her mom, just call her mom. Mom, I understand that's your expectation of me, but I'd like you to just know that I'm never going to meet all your expectations. It's just not possible. And she might look at you a little bit strange, right? And just like, yeah, I'm sorry, Mom, but I'm just never going to meet your expectations. That's not my goal, to meet your expectations. As you said, this is our own life, but you need to be able to do that in a very loving and kind way. So you learn as part of the core path to enlightenment, what's called right intention, right speech. And this is where the Buddha is teaching you the natural law of karma, of cause and effect, of how to have wholesome intentions and how to speak in ways that are wise so that you're not causing harm. So if you're speaking with agitation in your mind and you have anger in your mind, that's not the proper time to talk. If you're talking to your mother-in-law when you're agitated and annoyed and frustrated, that's all that's going to come out through your mind. So you would like to train your mind to be calm and peaceful so that then when you're talking to your mom, you can be loving and kind. And that's where the training comes in. It's not going to be just one conversation with me and I can give you 5 minutes of guidance and then you can instantly transform your mind and transform mother-in-law. But I can give you a couple pointers to help you get started, but then really encourage you to learn and practice the entire path so that then when you're experiencing this from mother-in-law, that you can learn how to deal with it, because it's going to take more than just a 5-minute answer to a question. But so cultivate your own mind, cultivate the wisdom, train your own mind. You can attend this program online. You can read the books, these kinds of things. But then also, while mother-in-law is doing these things, you can either ignore it, you can change the topic, you can even just say to her, I'm sorry, mother-in-law, I apologize. I'm never going to be able to meet your expectations. Maybe I'm not the best daughter-in-law for you, right? You can say those kinds of things. And then she'll be like really, looking at you strangely perhaps, but you're giving her something to think about, but you're not trying to change her. You're just being honest with her. But she may not ever eliminate the expectations of you guys. But as long as you don't adopt her expectations as your expectations, then your mind can be protected. As soon as you try to live up to her expectations, that's you adopting her cravings. And now you're going to be frustrated and agitated because you're not going to ever be able to meet all of her expectations. Mm-hmm. Yes, you're welcome. So I also encourage you to read that book as well, the first book. You can download it or print it or get printed versions of it. Any other questions on loving kindness or compassion? No? Okay. So I'm going to move on to the next two, which is sympathetic joy and equanimity. These are also healthy mental states that you would need to cultivate that antidote specific problems or symptoms that are in the mind. So what sympathetic joy is, this is joy for others' success, even if you didn't contribute to it. This is the very opposite of jealousy or envy. So if you're noticing jealousy or envy in the mind, you would like to bring in the sympathetic joy, which is joy for others' success, even if you didn't contribute to it. So let's just say that you're at work and there's a new position that opens up at your company, and you and 2 or 3 or 4 other people apply for it. And now you really want this job really badly. It's like the perfect job, the best salary, everything would be wonderful. And then you're just sitting at your desk one day and one of your coworkers come around and say, hey, guess what? I got the new job. I got the promotion. And this was something that you were trying to get, right? You might notice the jealousy or the envy coming up. And what you would like to do is eliminate that, because that jealousy or that envy is coming from your craving, desire, attachment of wanting that job. Now somebody else had something good happen for them, and now your jealousy is arising. And this is not going to help you maintain your peacefulness and joy. You're going to have the mind polluted with that jealousy. So what you would like to do is bring in the sympathetic joy, where you have joy for others' success, even if you didn't contribute to it. So even if you feel a bit of jealousy or envy in the mind, you would like to arise the sympathetic joy. And even if you can just smile, or you can say, oh, that's wonderful, I'm pleased for your success, or, oh, that's really great for you. I know that that's going to be really helpful for you and your family. Even inside, if you don't feel it 100%, if you could just kind of like start moving in the direction of this sympathetic joy. Because this path, just like we were talking about this path of anger, hatred, or will, that's a well-worn path that you've got all the bushes and stickers pushed back, that you go down this path maybe regularly and it leads to broken relationships. Well, this well-worn path of jealousy and envy, that doesn't lead anywhere beneficial either. And you're trying to go down this new path. And when you're forging this new path, sometimes is a struggle, and you need to kind of like go down this path just a little bit. And maybe going down that path a little bit is to smile, or to say, oh, that's wonderful for you. I'm pleased to hear the good news for you. Or this is going to be great for your family. Congratulations, right? And inside you might still be conflicted, but you went down this path a little bit. And each time you go down this path, it'll get easier and easier, because you'll push back more and more of the stickers, more and more of the branches, and it'll get easier and easier for you to go down this path. So if your friend comes to you and tells you they got a brand new house or a brand new car, they're going on vacation, they got a new promotion, maybe they got a baby, or they got married, they got a new partner, certain things that maybe you want, when you hear that other people have experienced these things, you might get jealous, or you might have envy. So you would like to arise this sympathetic joy. The way that you do it is the same thing. You practice mindfulness, awareness of mind. Anytime you see jealousy or envy arising, you cut that off and let it go through applying right effort. And you arise the wholesome quality of sympathetic joy. So if you understand the symptoms and you understand the remedy is sympathetic joy, then you know when to employ that and bring that in at any given time. And this also antidotes pride. If you're like really prideful about certain things that you've accomplished in life, and then when somebody else accomplishes something maybe higher than what you've accomplished, you can also eliminate that pride, becoming more humble, where you just have joy for their success, even if they accomplish something better than you, or maybe you're on your way to try to accomplish that thing that they're have already accomplished, and you might notice a certain amount of jealousy and envy or certain pride coming up in the mind. This can help you by bringing in the sympathetic joy. Then the fourth Brahma-vihara here, or this healthy mental state, is called equanimity. There's two aspects to equanimity. The first one is this mental calmness, composure, evenness of temper, especially in a difficult situation. That's one aspect of equanimity. The other aspect of equanimity is treating others equally. If you look at this word equanimity, the root word is equal. You would like to treat all beings equally, because in the world, your mind and maybe others might be putting people above you or putting people below you. So if you put yourself above people and talk down to people, and you put yourself below people and talk up to people, this is from the conceit or from the ego in the mind. And as long as you're putting yourself above people and talking down, or you're putting yourself below people and talking up to them, you're an overactive mind. In this situation, let's just say you get a phone call that your mom's been in a terrible car accident and she's on her way to the hospital. She's in the back of an ambulance right now. And you get this phone call with your craving, your attachment to your mom, wanting her to be permanently healthy, which isn't actually possible because of impermanence. But if you have a craving, desire, attachment for your mom to be permanently healthy, when you get this phone call, your mind can easily be shaken up. And now you grab your keys, you run out the door, you bolt across town. Maybe you get in a car accident. At the very least, you're going to show up to the hospital with your mind shaken up. And now when you're talking to the doctors and nurses, you're not going to be able to fully comprehend what's going on. And you're not going to be able to fully make wise decisions to help your mom. But if you can maintain your equanimity, if you can train your mind to have calmness and composure, when you get this phone call, you can understand, like, okay, mom's exactly where she needs to be. She's in an ambulance. She's headed to the hospital. These people are taking care of her. Let me calmly make my way to the hospital. And then by maintaining my calmness and composure, I will arrive to the hospital. I won't get in an accident. And then when I show up, my mind will be in a better condition that I can talk with the doctors, I can talk with the nurses, and I can start making decisions to help mom. So you start learning how equanimity is actually really helpful for you, that this shaking up of the mind, this unsteadiness of the mind, this is actually going to plague the mind and make it difficult for you to make wise decisions in daily life. Because when the mind is uncalm, you're not going to have mindfulness or awareness of mind. When you don't have awareness of mind, you're not going to have concentration, which is focus and clarity of mind. And when you don't have focus and clarity of mind, you're not going to be able to access your wisdom and make wise decisions to produce wholesome results in the world. What you're working to do on this path is you're working to always make wise decisions. Because whenever you make unwise decisions, it's going to produce unwholesome results. This is unwholesome gamma or karma, the unwholesome results of the unwise decisions that you're making. So anytime you allow your mind to be shaken up and you start making decisions, you're going to make unwise decisions that produce unwholesome results. So by maintaining your calmness and your composure, practicing equanimity, you have mindfulness or awareness of mind. You also have concentration, and then you can practice making wise decisions because you can access your wisdom. And now by making wise decisions, you can experience wholesome results. So equanimity is so key that you maintain your calmness and composure, whether it's your parents being injured or your children, or maybe you have a child that comes home from school with a bad report card, or maybe you get fired at work, or you see something walking down the street or on your way to work. If you allow your mind to be shaken up, now you're going to start making all these unwise decisions. So calmness, you can get to mindfulness, which is the awareness of mind. With awareness of mind or mindfulness, you can get to concentration, which is focus, clarity of mind. Then you can access your wisdom and make wise decisions that are going to produce wholesome results for you. So this equanimity is antidoting the restlessness, the worry, the anxiety, the overactive mind. It's also eliminating arrogance and ego by treating everyone impartially. That's that second part of it. And the way that you arise it is by practicing breathing mindfulness meditation and generosity. You're eliminating your cravings, desires, attachments, because when you're mind is shaken up, it's because of your cravings. If you have longing and yearning and you're craving for things to be a certain way, when they're that way, you'll be happy. But when they're not that way, you'll be angry or frustrated. Your mind will be shaken up. So that's consistent ongoing training that you're doing in order to eliminate your cravings. But also you're using your mindfulness, your awareness of mind. So as soon as you have this awareness of mind and you hear something that is going on that's a difficult situation, right away you should start triggering your equanimity. That as soon as you're in a situation where, whoa, this is really challenging, right away, calm down, calm down, calm down. Train your mind to be calm. Don't make decisions when your mind is all shaken up, because when you put decisions out into the world with a shaken up mind, it's going to be unwise. And now you're going to experience these unwholesome results coming back to you. So your mindfulness or awareness of mind is helping you to be aware. And then your right effort is helping you to be able to apply the effort to arise this equanimity, eliminate the mind being shaken up, and arise this equanimity where the mind can be calm and composed. Any questions on this? Yes, sir. By the way, how's the temperature for you guys? Is it cold? See some of you guys. Yeah, the temperature is changing. So let me adjust this. Yeah.
Hello. Yeah. So I notice a little bit in myself and my, especially maybe male friends back in Sweden. There's a bit of pride in composure and control, but there's no treating everyone impartially. So there's like this suppression or something around that. Yeah, can you speak or something? Is there a difference between equanimity and that kind of controlled effort of your? It's more of an appearance kind of thing. I feel like
From your parents, you said?
no appearance.
Appearance.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
So you want to appear to be equanimous, but it feels more suppressed.
Yeah. So the things that I'm teaching you on the path to enlightenment, you're going to see the vast majority of the world is not practicing, right? They're doing just the opposite. This is one of the reasons why the world struggles so much. There's so much stress and anxiety and hostility in some places of the world because they're not practicing these things. So while you see other people aren't practicing these things, it's important for you to practice them and not conform to what other people are doing. So if other people are not treating people fairly and they are putting themselves above and below others, that's what they're choosing to do, and that's affecting them. But you would like to get to the point where you're choosing to practice these teachings, also without the expectation that other people will practice these. These aren't a bunch of rules or commandments that the Buddha is teaching, and then when everybody practices these rules, the world will be perfect and peaceful. Instead, it's how to train your mind to be peaceful and joyful despite what other people are doing, despite what you're experiencing in the world. You can get to peacefulness regardless of what other people are doing. So like the Buddha and people who are enlightened today, the mind can be peaceful and joyful now in this life, even though other people are not peaceful. And that's what it means to get liberated and get free. So even though other people are treating each other, putting themselves above and below each other, treating each other hostile and bitter and harsh. Well, it'd be wonderful if everybody treated each other polite, kind, friendly, and respectful. That's not the world that we live in. We live in an impermanent world where some people are polite, kind, friendly, and respectful, and others aren't. So you would like to detach your emotions. Don't attach your emotions to what other people are doing, or don't make your practice about what other people are doing, but instead just understand, like, okay, that's what they're choosing to do, but I'm going to choose to treat everybody equally and make sure you think about everybody being equal.
It's not fully what I mean. It's the if there's a difference between having a controlled equanimity in a way, like it's like a prideful composure and prideful equanimity, based on appearance in a way.
Is this something that you're experiencing?
Yeah, myself, and I see it in other male friends mainly.
Okay.
Yeah.
So oftentimes one of the ways to get to a healthy mental state is kind of like a very windy road, right? It's not just like, okay, my mind's shaken up and I'm just going to start being calm. It's not that snap of a finger. It's this gradual training that's going to get you there. So if people are being prideful about their equanimity, then that means it's polluted with some conceit. That's one of the fetters, one of the pollutions. So you need to get the conceit out of the way, where there's no arrogance, that you're just being equanimitous because you know that it's wise and it's helpful for your mind. But you're also not clinging and attached to the equanimity as well, because if you're attached to this equanimity, when you don't have equanimity, you'll be frustrated and agitated. By the time you get to enlightenment, your mind just always has equanimity. It's just always there. There's calmness and composure. But on your way there, it's kind of like a light bulb flickering, that you'll see some equanimity in some situations, and in other situations you don't have it. So if you cling or you crave this equanimity, when you have it, you'll be happy, and when you don't have it, you'll be angry or frustrated. So when you see the equanimity in the mind, it's like, all right, I see you, equanimity, that's nice, all right, let's just keep going with our day. So it's being aware of the qualities of equanimity, but also the other qualities of enlightenment, like peace and joy and all these other qualities that start arising. You notice them in your mind, but you don't cling to them and hold on to them. And then that way you don't take pride and have conceit in them as well. Yes, ma'am.
How might cultivating the healthy mental states help with ongoing feelings of loneliness?
Loneliness comes from craving, desire, attachment. So when you're eliminating craving, desire, attachment, you can get to the point where you're no longer lonely. As long as you're longing and yearning for something that you don't have, you can experience loneliness potentially. Like, say you want to be around other people and now you're alone, you're experiencing that loneliness because you want to be around other people, perhaps. Different people experience loneliness in different situations, but it's always coming from craving, desire, attachment. There's something that the mind wants that it doesn't have, and now it's experiencing that loneliness. So these aren't going to really target the loneliness, but the craving, desire, attachment, and elimination of that's what's going to target the loneliness and boredom and things of that nature. So that's why you're practicing the breathing mindfulness meditation. And then the next quality that I'm going to talk to you about, which isn't part of the Brahma-viharas, but is something that you need to practice in order to eliminate craving, desire, attachment. Okay, so these are the 4 Brahma-viharas: loving kindness, compassion, sympathetic joy, and equanimity. And you can see what they're remedying, and you can start applying them much like a doctor, that if you see the symptoms in your mind, then you can apply the prescription. This is where the Buddha gets that reputation of being a doctor, but you can be your own doctor. You're your own best doctor because you'll be aware of what's going on in the mind. But then there's another quality that's a really important, healthy quality that I talk about in this chapter. It's not part of the Brahma-viharas, but it's an important quality to cultivate that oftentimes people are really challenged to cultivate. So that's why I included it in this chapter as part of the title, Cultivating Healthy Mental States. This quality is called generosity. The generosity is giving and sharing more than is strictly required in any given situation without any expectation of anything in return. Oftentimes when there's craving, desire, attachment in the mind becomes very selfish because the mind's pursuing its own selfish desires. In order to train the mind to let go and eliminate its cravings, desires, attachments, you're going to need to practice a certain amount of generosity in your life. The Buddha encouraged people to practice generosity all throughout their life on a daily basis. And remember, he was actually a prince destined to become a king. He was very rich and very wealthy. So he didn't teach people to practice generosity in order to enrich himself or anything like that. But he was observing what he did in order to get to enlightenment. And during his life and his previous lives, he practiced generosity where he was giving and sharing. If you can imagine spending 45 years teaching people how to get to enlightenment and living off of food and water and the donations of clothes and housing and stuff like this. And he just, lived on the generosity of what people offered him. He didn't have a salary. He didn't make money, and he didn't even accept gold and silver during his life. He only accepted food, water, clothing, shelter, and medical care. But he practiced a certain amount of generosity himself by sharing the teachings, and then people practice generosity with him. So practicing generosity will lead to your enlightenment, and he encourages people to practice generosity throughout their daily life. Not just practicing generosity with him, but you're going to need to practice generosity with other people as well. By you training your mind to give and share without any expectation of anything in return, this will help eliminate any selfishness that might be in the mind, any holding on, any craving, desire, attachment. Because that's what the mind does when it has craving, is it tends to hold on to things and cling to things. So when you can give and share, like your food, your clothing, your resources, maybe your time, your effort, your energy, your resources, as you're giving and sharing things, you start noticing this interconnectivity between all of us, that it's okay to give and share, and that you don't need to always get something. Because oftentimes the way our mind is trained as we're growing up is that if I give this much time, I get this particular thing. Or if I do this thing, I get this thing for myself. And the only reason why one might choose to do something is because they get something. But you would like to get to the point where you're willing to do something without any expectation of anything in return. This is what's going to train your mind to let go and not hold on and have craving, desire, attachment. Breathing mindfulness meditation is helping you to do that, but you're also going to need to couple that with generosity. And that's what's going to help you to train your mind to let go. So this helps to eliminate the unwholesome quality of craving, desire, attachment, this holding on, this selfishness, this desires, this selfishness that the mind has. And you're going to need to practice this and cultivate it in the same way that I've been talking about with the Brahma-viharas, which is you're going to need to have mindfulness or awareness of mind, where you're noticing that you're being selfish, or you notice that you're not sharing and you're not giving. And then when you notice that, you need to apply the right effort, to apply the effort and energy, the motivation, the encouragement, the initiative, the willingness to do something, where you apply effort to give and share. Because you need to be able to practice generosity without craving. Sometimes people have a craving to practice generosity, a longing, a yearning, and you might get to the point where you deplete your resources that are going to sustain your life. But also, if you were indifferent and you could care less and you maintained your selfishness, your mind's not going to be peaceful there either. So you'd like to come to the middle, where you're practicing giving and sharing without any expectation of anything in return, and you're giving and sharing your time, effort, energy, and resources. And there's lots of ways for you to practice generosity. You guys probably already know some of those ways, but maybe you're holding back in certain situations where you could be practicing more generosity, and that would be able to help you to then be able to eliminate your cravings, desires, attachments. There's this teaching that the Buddha shares that when I learned it the first time, it was very impactful. So when I talk about generosity, I tend to share this particular teaching. This is the words of the Buddha. He says, "Monks, if beings knew, as I know, the results of giving and sharing, they would not eat without having given, nor would the stain of selfishness obsess them and take root in their minds. Even if it were their last bite, their last mouthful, they would not eat without having shared it, if there were someone to share it with. But because beings do not know, as I know, the results of giving and sharing, they eat without having given, and the stain of selfishness obsesses them and takes root in their minds." What he's talking about is the results of giving and sharing, that if beings knew, as I know, the results of giving and sharing, what he's talking about is the enlightened mental state. If you knew how peaceful and how joyful the mind is in the enlightened mental state, you would not eat without having given. Because if you knew that it's generosity that is going to lead to this enlightened mental state, then there's no situation that you wouldn't be willing to share. So the Buddha is talking about this enlightened mental state, the peace, the calm, the serenity, the contentedness with joy. He knows what that enlightened mental state is, and he knows that it's generosity that helped him to get to that. And if beings knew, as he knew, what those qualities were and what the real experience was, and that it's this generosity that is the catalyst that's helping you to be able to train your mind to get to that enlightened mental state, then he's saying there's essentially no situation where you wouldn't share, even if it was your last bite, your last mouthful. So sharing is going to lead to this improved quality of mind. We're usually taught as a child to share, but we're not usually taught why. And as we're a child, we're learning to share our toys and to share different things. But as we get older and we age, we tend to go away from those things, and we tend to hoard things for ourselves because of our cravings, our desires, and our clinging. So what the Buddha teaches, and what I would encourage you to consider to do, is practice generosity with the people around you. Whether it's going into a store and you open the door and help somebody go into the door, into the store, or things like this. But you need to be careful, because if you're standing there holding the door and you have an expectation that they say thank you, and then when they don't say thank you, you're going to be irritated and annoyed. That's your craving, desire, attachment. You're causing it yourself. So when you're practicing generosity, you need to do it without any expectation of anything in return. Even a simple thank you. You don't even have an expectation for that. You're just holding the door because you know it's enhancing your mind and it's helping you get closer to enlightenment. Or you're just sharing your food just to share your food because you know it's helping your mind and you're not expecting anything from somebody. Or anything else that you might decide to give and share. Don't have any expectation of anything in return from anybody. You can be joyful before you give. You can be calm and confident while you're giving. And then you can be joyful after you give. But if you have expectations, you might be joyful before giving, but then after you give, you might be disgruntled or angry because you have a certain expectation. So these are the words of the Buddha. He teaches that before you give, be joyful. While you're giving, be calm and confident. And then after you give, be joyful. Because sometimes after you give and you practice generosity, you might have remorse. Like, oh my goodness, I didn't give enough. I should have gave more. Why was I so selfish? Oh, I feel bad. Or you might say, oh, I gave too much. Why did I give so much? Oh my goodness, why did I give so much? I'm not going to have what I need. So you would like to be joyful before giving and after giving, where you don't have this remorsefulness. So this generosity is such a key, important aspect of your practice that I included here in this chapter, because while it's not part of the Brahma-viharas, it is part of developing and cultivating healthy mental states. You would like to eliminate the stain of selfishness. That's the words of the Buddha here. I think, does he say stain? Yeah, stain of selfishness. In other parts of his teachings, he refers to this as well. It's a stain, it's a pollution of selfishness that you would like to get rid of out of the mind. Do you guys have any questions on generosity? No? Question or anything else? You guys can ask any questions that you like.
So, in what Buddha said, maybe this is like a question, I'm being ignorant, but kind of like that in a different tradition, and like fasting is kind of making you aware of like the desire of eating and stuff arise. Like in Buddha teaching, is there like any type of fasting practice?
So the Buddha taught to eat in moderation, because if you gorge on food or you eat out of emotion, this is the mind's craving, desire, attachment, the longing, yearning. So if you've ever been sad and then you like turn to like chocolate cake or ice cream or something like this is the mind just having craving and trying to get to pleasant feelings. And the only way that the mind knows how to do that in the unenlightened state, when it's unwise, is through craving. Because when the mind's feeling painful feelings, it's uncomfortable with those painful feelings, and the mind's trying to figure out how to get back to something that's somewhat comfortable. And the only way that it knows how to do that perhaps is through more craving. But then it's just a cycle. You end up right back in the painful feelings again. So you need to break that. You need to rewire that in the mind so that you realize that longing, yearning for food isn't going to actually solve your problems. So the Buddha taught to eat in moderation, and he ate just once a day, but you don't have to eat just once a day to get to enlightenment, but you will need to eat in moderation where you're not gorging yourself, where you may eat 2, 3 times, 4, 5, 6 times a day, because household practitioners, we have a lot higher calorie intake and caloric needs than someone who's sitting around and meditating and teaching throughout their day. So you might need to eat 2, 3 or more times per day, but you like to eat smaller portions rather than really gorging, because it requires a lot of effort from the body to digest all of that. So you're not interested in fasting where you don't have any food, but you're not interested in gorging either, but you bring the mind to the middle where you're eating in moderation. And that's what the Buddha taught. And then be observant of the mind that you're not eating based on emotion. That's the central desire that the mind has.
Thank you.
Yes, you're welcome. All right, I'm not seeing any other questions anywhere. So what I'll do is just end class by inviting you guys to come to any of the future classes that we have here on Sunday, Wednesday, and Saturday. We have classes here each week. And then we even have courses and retreats throughout the month and throughout the year that you guys are welcome to attend here at the temple or online. And as you've heard me mention, that we have books and other resources that you can all access from our website. So I'd like to thank you all for joining for today's class and invite you to all of our future classes, courses, and retreats. Next week on Sunday, I'm going to be teaching chapter 15, which is titled True Love, Love Without Attachment. This is where you're going to understand why your relationships haven't really been going so well in certain situations, perhaps, where maybe you've had some difficulties with life partners or family members or things like this. Because as long as you don't understand what true love is and you're not able to practice true love, then you're not going to have true love coming back to you. So the more that you understand what true love is and you practice it, then you can experience much more fulfilling and sustaining relationships, more sustaining and more satisfying relationships. So thank you all for joining for today's class. Perhaps I'll see you guys in a future class. Have a very wonderful and lovely rest of your day. Sawadee-khap. Thank you again for watching. Enjoy your meditation. Look forward to seeing you online and answering any questions that you might have. Thank you so much.